Good morning, dear friends. Thank you for joining us for our daily Talmud study. Today is Sunday, June 20th, the 10th of Tammuz, Father's Day. It's a Sunday, and the fact that we have all these wonderful, smiling, beautiful Torah scholars here on a Father's Day is a testament to the devotion to Torah study. And so certainly we should dedicate today broadly for the wonderful fathers who devote themselves to Torah. But I do want to dedicate today's learning specifically for the just past yahrzeit of Mindel Riva Bas Kalman Kleinmus. This is the mother of our dear Dr. Hammer, our dear Levi. So we'll dedicate today's learning, Lila Nishmaser, Neshama Shabbat Aliyah. And there's no question that the learning of Torah and all the wonderful things that our doctor and his family and his kids and his grandkids and the whole mishpacha do are a testament to what a wonderful woman, no doubt, his mother was, and it's all a schus. And we'll just add the cherry on top by dedicating today's learning to this wonderful person. And thank you, Doctor, for being a devoted member of our learning.
Amen.
So as I mentioned before the recording, we'll go a drop shorter than usual to accommodate any additional Father's Day festivities or meetups or whatever. And again, the fact that our dear friends are on is the greatest tribute and testament to the devotion to learning. And today we're learning Maseches Shabbos. I don't remember if I said in the intro, we're in the beginning of the 6th chapter by Ma'isha, and we're going to have a chance to discuss a host of different topics. Of course, primarily we're going to talk about ancient adornments, clothing, as well as other related matters. So we're actually going to start off talking a little more about the laws of chatzitza, the laws of interference or interruption between the human body and the mikvah, as of course it all was brought in somewhat parenthetically to our discussion. Reb Beryl?
To be politically correct, will the Gemara discuss anywhere a category for men?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I didn't want us to get into trouble.
Yes, men also need to consider. Oh, we just lost the other marker. Men also need to be mindful of what they're allowed to wear on Shabbos. Absolutely. All right, let's get started. And so, as you may recall, we started talking yesterday about certain things that a person might wear in their hair that would be an issue for going to the mikvah. And because occasionally a person would go to mikvah on Shabbos, we advise generally not to wear those adornments to avoid to avoid that type of trouble. And so once we're into that discussion, we're going to continue a little further on the matter of chatzitza, interruption between the body and the water of the mikvah. So as you recall, we talked about that these thicker, wider, woven tubes, I think was the word we used for it, is not a problem. It's not an issue with chatzitza. It doesn't interfere between the person and the mikvah. And therefore, we're not afraid you'll take it off. And therefore, you're allowed to wear it on Shabbos. That was what the Gemara indicated at the end of the discussion on Friday. So we're just going to go back to this line. We read it Friday, but we'll recap it because that's what we're discussing. Rav Kana inquired of Rav, what's the halacha with these hollow chains, tubes that are woven? If we're talking about woven stuff, Koshu Arug Loi Gazru, the rabbinic decree regarding a concern of chatzitza doesn't apply. Why? I'm sorry. On Shabbos, you're allowed to wear it. Why are you allowed to wear it on Shabbos? Why is there no gzeira? Because it's not a chatzitza. It's marnami. Amar Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua Koshu Arug Loi Gazru. And similarly, we've been taught that anything that is a woven in such a manner is not a concern of a chatzitza, and therefore it's not an issue for mikvah, and therefore you can wear it on Shabbos. That is the discussion of the Gemara. We mentioned this on Friday. And again, we talked about it's a thicker, wider weave. Water can penetrate and come through it. Therefore, it does not interfere with the hair or the body on Shabbos. Ikad Amri, there is an alternative way that this teaching has been conveyed to us. It's conveyed in the following way. So again, the same Rav Huna Braid Rabbi Yeshua, who says Kol Shu Arug Gazer, that the rabbis did not make a decree about weaving or woven stuff. Well, it's taught in a different way as well. Amar Afuna Braid Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yehuna Braid Rabbi Yeshua taught, Chazena Lachvosi de Lakaptan Alave. I noticed that my sisters are not concerned about this type of woven chain situation in their hair as it pertains to the mikveh, and being that they are not concerned about it, removing it, it's a sign that it's not a chatzitza, and therefore you're not going to remove it on Shabbos or whatever. So, an interesting observation. Let's read Rashi, and then we can discuss if there are any other interesting questions that came up from the statement. Litlon meiraishan, they would not remove it from their hair. Kishein roich tzais b'chamin, when they would be bathing in warm water. Alma, ayla b'humaya shaper. From here we can infer that water very effectively comes through and in between this woven hair adornment. Afilu lahanas rechitza, and this works even when one is bathing for pleasure. And therefore, we also don't need to remove it for going to the mikveh. And being that it can remain affixed when one goes to mikveh, you could wear it on Shabbos. Because if one were to have to go to the mikveh, they would not have to remove it because of an interruption and also because it doesn't bother them. So Rashi says an interesting comment. Rav Huna is aware of the way or the kind of things that his family members would be comfortable bathing in. And so from there we can infer that the same would apply to the mikveh, and it doesn't interfere. Your hair can get very clean even if you're wearing this kind of woven situation. The cup done alave or alayo, they're not afraid I'm sorry, I should re-explain myself. Rashi mixed it all together, but literally, like kap done alave means it doesn't bother them, and therefore they don't remove them from their hair and they leave them on. If they leave them on, it's not a chatzitza. It doesn't interfere with the mikveh. The Gemara is going to ask, we have two statements of Rav Huna, two ways of conveying the teaching of Rav Huna. What are they? Either my sisters are unperturbed by keeping this on when they bathe and thus when they go to the mikveh, or kol shu arug, when if it's a woven hair piece, there is no gzera. So the Gemara wants to know, is there any difference if he just simply said there was no rabbinic decree that you cannot wear this on Shabbos because it interferes with the mikveh, or if his sisters confirm that doesn't concern them when they bathe? Is there any difference between the two different versions of how Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua's teaching is conveyed? So the Gemara answers, yes, there is. The difference is if this thick woven situation, which again I'm not quite envisioning precisely what it looked like, but we can imagine some kind of headpiece. The difference is if it is dirty. According to the first way his teaching is conveyed, that said, Kol Shu Arug Legazer, the rabbis did not make a decree about this woven. They did not decree that you're not allowed to go out on Shabbos with this woven piece. Haninami Arug Ninu. So then this headpiece is woven and you're allowed to wear it on Shabbos because it's a woven wear and you don't have to remove it. Rashi. They never made any comment about going out on Shabbos with this on your hair. But if the reason why, if the discussion is about if women are concerned about removing this hairpiece for the mikvah, and therefore you can wear it on Shabbos, maybe if it's clean, you'll wear it out. If it's dirty, we are concerned that you would want to remove it before bathing and going to the mikvah. And therefore, there's a small distinction. When it's dirty, are you allowed to wear it on Shabbos or not? It might seem to you like a big to-do about not much, right? But we want to really dig down and get precisely the license, the permission to wear this thing on Shabbos. And I guess you're also wondering, since when do people wear dirty things? I guess different times, things were somewhat different.
Wow. Rabbi.
Yes.
I have a different problem. Why do we have to go through all this? Wouldn't it be simpler to say it's okay to wear this, but you can't go into the mikveh. How do we connect
Mm.
this transparency? How often do they go to the mikveh? I'm not sure.
No. What we're saying is the original gezerah, the original rabbinic restriction about wearing certain headgear was because they had to remove it for the mikveh. Things that aren't an issue for the mikveh, the Chachamim never said you can't wear. And so either we're starting from the klal, we're starting from the gezerah. The gezerah was never determined to be about things that are woven. And then it's an open-ended waiver, if you will, regardless of the situation of how much buildup there is on these tubes. You can imagine it's like sitting on your hair. There's going to be some buildup out for a few years. So that's the first thing. There's no gzera. We're not saying that you people like to wear dirty things. We're just saying that there's no gzera. But the second, which is getting into the mind, the mentality, the psychology of the people that are wearing this, well, then we're going to suppose that they probably were not comfortable wearing them when they're dirty, and they'll probably remove them when they're going to the mikveh. Because if you're trying to get clean, you're probably going to remove the source of schmutz before you do that, or the dirty thing. You don't want the mud to run into your hair. Maybe. Again, it's hard. It's hard to get into the mind of someone that lived 1,800 years ago, but we'll take the words of the Gemara at face value. If you want to see Rabbi Steindal's words, yads, they'll certainly remove them when they wash. I don't know why. Maybe they'll want to wear them so that they get clean. But the Gemara understands that they would remove them, and if they'd remove them when they're dirty, you'd remove them when going to mikveh. And if you'd remove it, well, then you better not wear it on Shabbos at all, lest you come to carry it. That's the thought process here. Long story short, there are two, Rashi, I believe, I have to read Rashi again, there are two potential issues about, we'll leave this off for now. Let's continue the Gemara. Now we're going to talk about a Mishnah that we quoted on the subject of chatzitza. So again, I know you signed on wanting to learn about the gear that you can wear on Shabbos, but we're spending a little more time talking about chatzitza, the items that might interfere between the hair and the water, the body and the water. Tananas, there's a Mishnah on the subject of chatzitza in the tract that it talks about the laws of mikveh and interference. It says like this: Ve'elu chaytzitzim ba'adam. The following items create a chatzitza, interference between, literally an interruption between a person and the water, and therefore are halachically problematic when one goes to the mikveh. Chutei tzemer, strands of wool, chutei pishtan, strands of flax, the haritzuos, sheberoi shabonos, and the straps that are conventionally placed on a girl's hair. Rashi, mishum the tani hasam elu chaytzim bekelim, tani lein tfilas adam elu chaytzim ba'adam. Okay, it's a comment on the formula of the Mishnah over there. Shal tzemer v'shal seir and chaytzim v'leimiyad al gabi seir. These items, no, I'm sorry. The Mishnah says wool, flax, and straps more generally on the heads of girls that are typically worn on the heads of girls can be a problem and block water from accessing the hair. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and says, shel tzemer, if it's made out of wool, v'shel seir, or made out of hair, ein chaytzitzim, these do not block. So I guess once upon a time, you might have made a kind of hair adornment out of human hair. Maybe not so unlike the fact that today there are people that wear wigs with human hair. Again, this is not my supreme specialty. But why are they not a problem? Because wool is not waterproof. Human hair is also not waterproof. And therefore, it does not interfere between the water and the person's hair. Rashi, because it doesn't really become very strongly attached. It has some kind of looseness. That's the way Rashi understands it. So wool and hair, human hair, does not interfere with water. Rav Huna comments and says, "V'kulan, this whole discussion, these items, are they a chatzitza or that they're not a chatzitza? The Rashi Habana Shaninu, here we're talking about the hair, the head, not necessarily about if it's on the body." Rashi, all these items are primarily being discussed when on the hair, You thought we're going to be coming to do a little lesson on hair. Dr. Hammer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a maven on wigs or sheitlach either. I have a question related to that. If you look upon a sheitel as a hat, and therefore you clearly are going to take off your hat if you're a woman when you go to the mikveh. Let's assume that you really have a shaven head completely. So you're going to take off. Does it then matter whether or not in the sheitel, if we consider it similar to a hat, these attachments are things that water can go through and not go through, since it's really never, ever going to be going to a mikveh to be immersed in the water?
Let me reframe your question. I'm not sure if I understood it, but let me reframe your question because I think you're getting onto something very good. There's a question. If I think this is what you're asking. Tell me if I get it right. If a sheitel is never worn into the mikveh, so you are removing it to the mikveh, so why are you allowed to wear a sheitel on Shabbos? Are you asking that question?
No. I'm saying if you're allowed to wear a sheitel on Shabbos, and it's never going into the mikveh, why does it matter what's attached to the hair in the sheitel in terms of whether or not water can go through that or not go through that?
Okay, so let me clarify. The entire discussion here, and I know why you're asking. That's actually a good question. We're not saying the only issue at hand regarding women, ladies' clothing or hair is about mikveh. One of the causes for concern is things related to mikveh. The broader issue is, will I end up removing it? And so Rashi clarified earlier on, when things that are removed, the more minor items that are removed, we have prohibited. Big issues, big matters, we might have not prohibited, and something that you're certainly not going to remove is also not a concern. So, so let's hold off on the attachments because we're going to see that discussion soon. But as far as why could you wear a sheitel on Shabbos if you have to remove it when you go to the mikveh? Well, the answer, which the Gemara is going to give soon, is that you're not exactly that answer, but we can infer. Women who wear sheitels typically don't just remove them on the street for any reason. So we're not really concerned that a person is going to take off their sheitel. Especially, doctor, as you say, if the person has the head shaven, then they certainly are likely not to take off the. So
okay.
So now back to our Gemara for a moment. And again, it's Father's Day, so we're talking about women's hair. Makes sense, right?
No, we could.
Don't they say that daddy's
a toupee? You could extend it to a toupee.
We could extend it to a toupee possibly, and also.
Yeah. So
is there such a thing as a daddy's girl, right? There's a special connection between dads and their daughters. So.
So if you're wearing a toupee, do you need a kippah or not?
That's a good question. Good question. It's a real question.
Yeah.
But I have many dear friends that wear toupees. Maybe they can.
Probably Marasayan.
Marasayan for sure.
Maybe.
I think out of derech eretz.
Both of them.
It's an interesting.
Throw in shalom bayis. If your wife has a head shaven, just throw that in.
All right. So again, we're going to go take a look at a Mishnah and Mikvahs that talks about different kind of stuff that's on the hair, that's an issue or not. So the Tanna Kama says that wool straps, flax straps, and generally bands are a chatzitza. Rabbi Yehuda says they are not a chatzitza. What is not a chatzitza? So just to note, he comments that semer, which is wool, and then he adds seyar, hair. Hair was not mentioned in this first edition, right? The first list over here, the Tanna Kama doesn't mention hair. And Rav Huna comments, generally these items are all we're talking about on the hair. So Maskef Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef has a question to Rav Huna. What exactly do you mean when you say that we're only talking about headgear? What is permitted? When you say that these things are a chatzitza on the hair, so what? And on the body, it's not a chatzitza. What do you mean? Rashi, Ashmina Rav Huna, the chutinami b'resha banashinu. Ilema lemotei tzemer. If you're trying to say, I'm sorry, ilema lemotei tzavar. If you're trying to tell us that they may be worn on one's neck, Udemai, what is it made of? Ilema lemute December, are we saying that you're allowed to have a wool strap wrapped around your neck? Maybe once upon a time that would have been considered a decorative fashion. Hashdarach al gabe kasha chaytzitz. If something that's soft, that's wrapped on something hard, is a chatzitza. Soft would be the wool. Hard, I believe we're saying, is the hair or the head. And we're saying that the soft against the hard is a chatzitza. Rach al gabe rach mivayi. Certainly, there should be a concern about two soft items. I know this is confusing, because it was confusing for me when I was looking at this. Let's look at Rabbi Steinsaltz. I think hopefully he explains it the way I understood it. Something that's soft, pressing against something soft, we're thinking maybe there'd be more space, but on the other hand, it's going to be able to press more firmly into each other. Two hard things don't interlock as well as two soft things that can mold together. And so it sounds like soft wool against the flesh could ironically be a greater degree of chatzitza than something that's less malleable and less soft. I believe that's pshat. Rashi says, "Samar kare rach legabe pishlan." Generally, wool is considered more malleable and softer than flax, which is considered generally more firm. So certainly there should be an issue with wool against the skin because it could really mold and bend and be very tight. And therefore, you should not be allowed to wrap a wool band around your neck. Rather, probably we're saying that you're allowed to have flax wrapped around the neck. Still, if the harder flax against the more hard head and the hair is a chatzitza, it should certainly be a concern if it's wrapped around the neck where it's going to really mold into the neck. It's a chatzitza, water won't be able to go through. You're wondering who's going to try to choke themselves in such a manner. The Gemara asks or makes the same point. Rav Yosef says, Hainu Talmud Rav Huna. This is what Rav Huna was trying to say. You know what? You are allowed to wrap bands of different types around your neck, although they can't be wrapped around your hair. Typically, if a person was going to adorn their neck with different kinds of straps, assuming that was once possibly a style, they're not going to do it in a way that's going to choke or strangle themselves. Rashi, lahadek chutim b'tzavara, the koisharton berevach shiu rafa. When you put something on your neck, likely it's going to be done very loosely. Your purpose of doing it loosely is so that you're not being choked. But while you're tying something around your neck in a very loose manner, so you don't choke, the byproduct or the side result is going to be that water will be able to flow through, similar to wearing a loose, and we discussed on Friday about wearing a loose garment into the mikvah so that the water can flow under it. Well, if it's very loose, it's not a concern. So that's what Rav Huna was saying. When you tie stuff on your hair, you tie it tight. You don't want it to slip off. When you tie it around your neck, you could do it loosely. First of all, you don't want to choke yourself. And second of all, something's tied around your neck. It has two bigger masses on both ends to keep it from slipping off, right? Something that's loosely tied on your hair might fall off. But if it's loosely tied around your neck, if it's smaller than your head or your body, it's probably going to stay in place. That's just my very, very brilliant commentary on. All right. So that is the comment. So again, we have a Mishnah. A Mishnah presents to us a machlokes, a debate about certain items that may or may not be a chatzitza, interference between the hair and the water of the mikveh. The first opinion lists wool, flax, and bands as a problem. And then we have Rabbi Yehuda who says, no, when it comes to wool, when it comes to hair, human hair tied on the hair, it's not a chatzitza, water can penetrate. And then we have Rav Huna who adds, this whole discussion is exclusively on the head, not on the body. The Gemara wants to understand what the deal is, and the Gemara answers simple. Women tie these things. Should they tie on their neck, it's going to be done listed. Gemara is not done. We got a problem. What's the problem? We have a text that shows that women are comfortable choking themselves. By the way, that's why Rabbi Steinsaltz, for whatever reason, says choneket is strangle. I chose to use the word choke because I think strangle is a little bit more severe than choke. Strangle is game over typically, whereas choke could just be very, very tight. So let's say Esei Abaye. Abaye asks a challenge. We have another text, a brisa, that says like this: Habanot yotzot b'chutin Shabbos nehem. Girls may go into the public domain with certain strings that were put in their hair. Strands. What are those strings? So we referenced it on Friday, I believe, that occasionally they put a piece.
The ears.
The pierced ears. Maybe they're not wearing the jewelry. Maybe they're not wearing earrings. Maybe they're too young to have earrings. I don't know. But they would still put something in so that the hole would not close up. Rashi says that. Today, when you pierce a girl's ear, you just give them earrings. But once upon a time, I imagine it was not as easy to just get a fairly affordable piece of earrings. So those that were more
Well, they have studs. When they first pierce their ears, they wear studs.
So I'm saying today, it's not a big deal to get a stud. You can get for, if you don't have a big budget, for $10, $15, $20, you can get something that you can put inside. I suppose once upon a time, they didn't have economic, cheap studs that were made in China that you could put in your ears. And so the starting price was probably something much greater than that. And so if you're a simple, impoverished person, you might have pierced your child's ears at a young age, but you might have just kept something a little less schmancy in the ears, like chutim, like some kind of string. But they're not allowed to walk around with chabakim. Chabakim are chokers, straps that are wrapped around their neck. Rashi, wide straps, not made of gold. Rashi says it's not really an adornment. It was just there for function. Rashi seems to think that it's done for maybe like a bib of sorts. Other commentaries disagree strongly with him. Singla, what's singla? A band. So it was some kind of band that was around the neck. Rashi says it was not done for beauty, it was just done for function. Other commentaries, I believe, say that it is some kind of beauty. If you're going to tell me that women aren't prone to choking themselves, why do we prohibit women from wearing this kind of thing on their neck that chokes them? And why does it exist if you said women don't choke themselves? Ravina answers, and by the way, we're turning the page now to 57b, Nun Zayin on the base. We're talking about a garment, not a garment that was for a bib of sorts. At least that's the way the Rabbi Steinsaltz translates, and I believe not like Rashi. And here we're talking about a kind of wide garment called a katla. Rabbi Steinsaltz says it's an ornamented strap which hangs around the neck. The isha chaynekes es asma. This a woman does kind of wear real tightly. Because in those days, what these bands would do is it would cause them to have a double chin. Okay, that's my interpretation. It would cause them to look fatter. Now today, prevalent society is not inclined to want to make a person look more balas basar. The nice word here is fleshy, fat, or chubby might be the word. But once upon a time, conventions of beauty were not quite the same as they are today. And it seems like in a world where there was a lot of poverty and starvation, and a person was emaciated, well, attractive was considered someone that was a bal basar or a balas basar, someone that had some meat on the bones. And this is maybe where the Russian, anyone ever met a Russian babushka that wanted their kid to be skinny? God forbid. They want their kid to eat and to be, right?
Just look at the Rubens paintings.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So once upon a time, you wanted to be of more body mass, and they would have this kind of thing to make a person look heavy. Now, obviously, in my estimation, we're not talking about strangulation, because most people could, if you have 10 seconds of looking in style, but then God forbid you're not alive, that would not be a point. So I think the understanding is that we're not talking literally about strangulation, which is why I prefer the word choking. They put on something that was kind of tight, a little uncomfortable, but they deemed it some people might have deemed it worthwhile because of how it made them look. Also, I think the wider the strap is, the less pressure it puts on a single spot, and therefore I believe it would allow a person to breathe. And Rashi, I think, makes this point. Doctor.
Piercing of ears of babies.
Yes.
Where does that? It seems that in different times and in different cultures, particularly not necessarily Jewish culture, but even within the Jewish spectrum, I think there are differences in how different communities look upon doing that at the very young age as compared
Yes.
to waiting. Is there a basis or rationalization or rationale for that? I mean,
I know that there's a discussion, but again, on this auspicious Father's Day, I'm a daddy that's not sufficiently read up on all the different minhagim about piercing ears. But I do know that there are different communities that had different traditions. Some people were inclined to hold off. I have a feeling it may have had to do with parents not wanting their children to be 100% in sync with conventional style. They probably wanted to keep their kids more, apart from the broader population. And so if there was a certain style convention, a certain style that was in style, this is my suspicion. I may be wrong. They might have not always wanted their kids to have the latest style. They wanted to keep them within a Jewish style to be less appealing, let's say, to the people that they didn't want their kids associating with or whatever.
Did anybody ever bring an objection altogether to piercing?
Well, pretty early on in the Torah, we have piercing, so I don't think that's going to be something that will take off very well.
How about piercing on the body but not in the ears?
we don't want to go there.
I don't believe there is a biblical or halachic restriction in the essence of it. But it is a good question. There's a question that I'm not prepared.
I see kids today with piercings all over.
Hold on. When I say I'm not prepared, I mean I haven't done the research, but there is a certain hesitance in Jewish tradition to modify the body, right? So, for example, tattoos are outright prohibited. It's biblical. But today, there's all different other kind of crazy ways that the body is modified with different kinds of piercings, shaloneda, and there's some crazy things that people could do with their ears and their tongues and whatever. I don't suppose those are really like aligned with it.
But in terms of the issue, Rabbi, of boys wearing earrings, I think it would be more or less prohibited as.
Oh, that's what you meant.
No, I'm bringing it up.
Oh yeah, well, there's a question of beged isha.
Yeah. Right.
Boys wearing girls' style and vice versa. And then the question that makes it a little more complicated and beyond the scope of the moment is that on occasion, what's considered beged ish or beged isha is influenced by conventional style, because as much as we don't like to admit it, no Jew was wearing pants in the time of Avraham Avinu or Moshe Rabbeinu. They were wearing robes, and something happened between then and now that we're wearing the clothing we're wearing today. So our styles are strongly influenced. So it's possible. And for example, I'm not weighing in. I'm not giving an opinion, but there are many Jews who wear a wedding band. Let's say, males. Is that considered beged ish? Well, there are probably those isha. There are those that would say it is, but in American society, where it's entirely familiar that a man would wear a ring, that might, according to many opinions, be acceptable. Just like in ancient times, a man would wear. Again, I'm not giving up psak halacha here, but in ancient times, a man would wear a signet ring, and that wasn't considered a feminine item.
Rabbi,
yes.
I think I read somewhere that somebody posted that women in slacks is permissible because so many women today do wear slacks. That's even a question whether it's beged ish.
So again, it's a complex and somewhat evolving subject, and it's also there are different opinions. So that's why over here I'm not taking a strong position, but absolutely it's a big discussion. And my point, what was my point? I don't even know what my main original point was. But anyways, there you have it. So once upon a time, and I think today there are certain kinds of necklaces that are called chokers, right? But I don't think they are literally choke. I think they just hug the neck. But if we'll go back to the pictures that we found on Friday, which I'm not going to right now, I think we might see certain pictures from an earlier time where people would wear some kinds of like thing on their neck or whatever. And so it's I think there's documentation of it not only in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, but I think in more recent times. By the way, Rashi's definition over here of the choker: beged chashav litlois b'tzavar, a prominent chashav, a garment that's placed on the neck. Keneged liba shelo yipol mashi yochelas al b'gadah. Rashi explains it to be a kind of bib of sorts. Now I know it's kind of offensive to call it bib because today bib is something that's exclusively used for young children, but it's that kind of effect. Basically, it's wide and it has straps on it, and people could attach stuff to it, or whatever. Basically, Rashi explains that it was used. I saw a picture somewhere, but or maybe tomorrow we'll show some pictures. I'm wondering, maybe we're in a pause over here. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. So today, really, we only discussed two items, both somewhat related to the mikveh. No, one related to the mikveh discussion, one getting somewhat back on track, describing two items on mikveh. The first question was about a teaching about this woven wear on the hair. Is it considered a chatzitza? And Rav Huna Bar Yeshua says it's not an issue. His teachings were presented in two styles. One, that the Chachamim never prohibited wearing this on Shabbos if it was woven. That's pretty open and closed. And then there's another one that says that he knew that his sisters were unconcerned about wearing this item when they were bathing. And Rashi explains that from here we infer that if they were unconcerned about wearing it when they bathe, they would be unconcerned about wearing it when they go to mikveh, and therefore they're not going to remove it when they go to the mikveh, and therefore it should not be a problem with wearing it on Shabbos. The Gemara asks, what's the difference between the two editions? And the Gemara said it's simple. If it's dirty, according to the first version, there's no gzera, dirty, clean, we don't care. According to the second version, that it's all about what the women are makbid, what the women are concerned about. Well, if they would remove it to bathe because it's dirty, and it makes sense they would, well, then they'd also remove it to go to the mikveh, and then you couldn't wear this woven situation on your hair when it is dirty. The second discussion that we saw, we looked at a Mishnah, actually from the Mishnah, from Maseches Mikvos, that talks about what is a chatzitza, what is an interruption and not an interruption in the hair. We brought three items. The first opinion says that wool and flax and these straps are an interference. Rabbi Yehuda says wool and hair is not. Rav Huna made the comment, we're talking only about the head, which led us to a question, why would they be acceptable on the neck? Surely it would be a greater chatzitza because it would cut into the skin and block out the water. And the Gemara answered in short, listen, people are not going to choke themselves. It's going to be done loosely. If it's loosely, water can run through. The Gemara asked the challenge. We read that there's a certain garment that's worn as a choker. Why is that not a problem? And the Gemara answers, no, we're talking about a specific kind of garment that they actually want to wear in a choking fashion. So typically they'd remove it on Shabbos, we're afraid. Here, it's a unique situation. But aside for this kind of choker, typically people don't just choke themselves. And therefore, if these bands are on the neck, it's done loosely. Tomorrow's Gemara will continue briefly on this subject, and then we'll go back to identifying the different ancient garments worn at the time of the Gemara. So for that, you'll have to join us tomorrow. Bli Neder, tomorrow we'll do a full session. Dr. Hammer?
Just quick question.
Sure.
Wool or hair? Only at one point did you add the word in your explanation, human hair. So my question is, where does it say human hair? I didn't see it anywhere saying, I see it says hair, but I don't see where it says human hair.
To my understanding, se'ar means human hair because the Hebrew language has different words for the other kinds of hair. It would be called semer, semer izim, semer gemalim. So usually if it's animal hair, you're asking as opposed to
human hair.
So the word se'ar means human hair.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't have synthetic hair, so there wasn't.
Right, no, I wasn't thinking of synthetic. I was thinking from animals.
So I probably should have clarified that sooner. But yeah,
right.
We're talking here specific. To my knowledge, we're talking about human hair.
Right.
Yashikoyach, dear friends, thank you for joining us on this Father's Day. And again, we'll mention Min Riva, Bas Kalman Kloinimus, Neshama Shavan Aliyah. Yesterday was the yard site, but we're dedicating today's learning for Neshama, and we're wishing only good brachas to her family, to her kids and grandkids and great grandkids, and all of Klal Yisrael.
Rabbi, before you take off, you see the professor at all? Did you have any report? How is he?
Bli Neder will hopefully have a report tomorrow. I did not get through to him until now, so we'll keep you posted.
Hopefully he's well. Okay.
Take care.
Happy Father's Day to all of you.
Happy Father's Day. Shkoyach. Is it Isru Chag Juneteenth?
Not in
Or-
Canada. Not in Canada. We had the slaves finish a different date.
I just. All right. Have a wonderful day. Shkoyach.
Gosh,
Thanks.
thank you.